Did you know that the temperature of the soil can make or break your garden? In this video, we're going to learn when and when not to use a heat mat. If you're new to gardening, it gets real easy to get really wrapped up in getting all of the things, and you may feel like you may need to get every single thing. And while a heat mat is most likely something you will need to get, some seeds germinate at a vastly different temperature and may not even require a heat mat, while other seeds are going to need a heat mat to reach those higher temperatures in order to mimic spring conditions. That means that you can start your seeds earlier and grow those and up-pot those plants quicker, so when spring does come, you're the first person on the block or at market to get fruits and vegetables from your garden. We're also going to take a look at some of the things a professional farmer may do separately from a hobbyist to further increase those yields. And then we're going to look at some of the different heat mat options so you can choose the one that's best for you. So we're starting a lot of seeds right now at Bootstrap Farmer, and as we make some of those videos, we don't want you to miss anything. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button below, and as we're starting seeds, feel free to ask as many questions as possible. I'm the one that reads the comments, and we can tailor those videos to exactly what you need. So with anything in farming, there's usually a right tool for the right job, and a heat mat gently raises and maintains the soil temperature in which your seeds are starting. But that tool is only right for the job if your seeds need that heat. And most of the seeds can germinate within a little temperature range of about 5 degrees. But the problem is a lot of your cool season crops like spinach, carrots, kale, broccoli, lettuce, if they have any heat whatsoever, it's going to put those seeds in a dormant mode and you're not going to get any germination. On the other hand, seeds like peppers and tomatoes often need temperatures of 80, 85 degrees plus. And if your seed's starting indoors, in which the indoor temperature range is 68 to 72 degrees for most households, depending on who's in control of the thermostat at the time, that may be too cold to launch some of those seeds into the germination process. So let's take a look at some of the factors that may affect some of these germination temperatures. Number one, the ambient room temperature and the room location. So if you're trying to start inside and you're using a heat mat and you're trying to get a little bit of natural light and you're putting that up against a window, if it's in a garage or something like that, as the sun comes up and comes down, the area around that window is likely to fluctuate a little bit, and it may drive the temperature in the room down. It may drive down some of the temperature that's in the soil within your cells or your air prune trays. Without a heat mat, if that temperature drops, it's likely to hold that temperature just a little bit longer than some of that ambient room temperature can have time to heat that back up before the next cycle starts, meaning that your seeds, A, are fluctuating in temperature, and B, they're never going to hit that threshold in which they may pop. So things like basements, garages, outdoor sheds, even if there's a little heater in there, they may be prone to too much fluctuation. This also extends to a propagation house. So let's say you had a greenhouse and it's heated and you used some heat mats for the right seeds. You still have a little bit of fluctuation, especially if that's on the end wall or you don't have enough circulation evening out the temperature in the hoop house. Tools like a humidity dome on top of the cell trays, which is inside of a 1020, also can help trap some of that hot air and keep that a little bit warmer while increasing the humidity, which is also a factor in a lot of germination rates. So another thing you can do is use a thermostat. This thermostat is attached to a cord, and that cord is attached to a probe that goes inside of the soil. Now, the way this works is once you set the thermostat to the ideal temperature range that you can find on the back of most seed packages or of the website of the seed company you bought the seed from, the heat mat is going to stay on until it reaches that temperature, and then the thermostat is going to turn the heat mat off. When it turns off, that soil is slowly going to dissipate the temperature until it gets out of range, and then the probe is going to turn the heat mat back on, raising the temperature. This means it's not going to get too hot, it's not going to get too cold, and it's going to stay in that nice little 3 to 4 degree window of the ideal temperature range. And while we're standing here, one thing of note, when you're using humidity domes or heat mats, once you start seeing more than 75% of the germination within the tray, it's time to remove the dome and it's time to remove the heat mat because the process of the heating up of the seed has already taken place. But that's not to say that you can just willy-nilly put those tender plants anywhere. They still need to stay within a nice, comfortable range as they sprout out and develop their root systems. Hardening off is going to come much later. When you first get your heat mat, it's going to be rolled up in a tube. When you pull it out, it's going to retain that shape until you plug it into the wall and heat it up. Lay it flat, plug it in, maybe weight it down with a couple of things to let the heat mat flatten out. The other thing I want you to consider when you're placing your mat somewhere is if it's on the ground or if it's near something cold or the temperature may fluctuate, especially with metal or cement, go ahead and put a piece of foam board underneath the mat to insulate it from any metal or concrete so it doesn't have any cold or heat transfer. Once your location is set, you'll simply put the 1020 right on top of the mat, and you're going to let the mat heat up the entire structure. It's not going to melt. Usually these mats are 10 to 12 degrees above ambient room temperature. Now the difference to that is if you use the soil probe temperature with the thermostat, you can put that in, and then you can more closely dial that temperature range in. Once the seedlings sprout, remove the seed tray from the mat and possibly remove the dome and let your seeds grow out. This is another reminder that not all seeds are created equal. So for instance, a lot of fruiting crops, tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, cucumbers, they're going to require a little bit higher temperature. That could be by variety, so make sure you take a look at the back of the seed package. Fruiting crops that do not want a heat mat are things like peas and beans, lettuce, kale, herbs, and a lot of Asian greens. Herbs that are beneficial for a heat mat, basil, oregano, any of these Mediterranean type of plants that require a lot of heat as they grow are likely to need a heat mat as they start. Not beneficial is cilantro and dill, as they enjoy colder soil conditions for germination and for growing. As far as flowers go, marigolds and zinnias, they love that warm summer heat, so put those on a heat mat. But not beneficial would be cooler season flowers like pansies, snapdragons, as they like to grow and germinate in colder temperatures. You can kind of think of domes as little miniature greenhouses. They trap the moisture and they reduce the evaporation, keeping the soil consistently damp, which is essential for good seed germination. Domes also shield seeds from fluctuations in temperature and humidity, helping them sprout faster and more evenly. They prevent soil crusting, making it easier for delicate seedlings to emerge. This is particularly useful for seeds like tomatoes and peppers, which thrive in warm, humid conditions. But I gotta say, this is not a substitute for just putting it outside and relying on the outside temperature to heat up this dome. It's a little tiny airspace and it's going to heat up much faster, while the bottom is likely to experience a lot of cold conditions. So it's very confusing for the plants. So think of this mini greenhouse does have to be contained inside or maybe inside of a bigger hoop house specifically designed for germination and sprouting, but don't rely on this to be a mini hoop house and that's the only thing you're going to need. Another little tip about humidity domes, a lot of folks think that they need to snap in place for them to work, and that's simply not true. Our domes are designed to fit loosely right on top, because most of our farmers, they're having to do a couple of dozen, a couple of hundred trays at any one time. And can you just imagine, as every single day, you have to lift up the dome and inspect your seedlings and inspect how everything's going, or perhaps to water. Can you imagine having to snap that every single time and then snap it back into place? It'd be a huge waste of labor. So quick up, do your maintenance, quick down, on to the next one. The other thing about humidity domes, as they can introduce mold and fungus if it gets too wet. That's why we have these vents that allow excess humidity and heat to escape, just like a ventilation system on a greenhouse would do. And again, once you start seeing all these seeds germinate, it's time to take this off, leave in that ambient room temperature, and let them thrive on your own. You gotta toughen up those plants. Bootstrap Farmer has two lines, a hobby model in a 1020 size and a 20 by 48. Again, once those are plugged in, that's gonna stay 10 to 20 degrees above ambient room temperature. Count on 10 degrees. You may or may not need a thermostat. The next thing that we have is the commercial line, which is a 21-inch by 60-inch linkable master mat, which plugs into the wall, and then the add-on mats simply plug into that. You can have one master and 3 add-ons for a total of 4 total mats at 21 by 60. That's enough for 20 10-20 trays at any one time. And most often these are paired with the thermostat. All of our heat mats are waterproof and easy to clean with 6-foot cords and are UL listed. If you want to learn more about specifics about how germination temps work, check out our popular heat mat masterclass. In 9 minutes and 27 seconds, we give you a fast lesson in the best seed starting practices.